Om Indram Mitram Varnamagnir Matarato Divyaha Sasuparno Gurutman Ekam Satvipar Bahuda Vedantya Yaman Mataresh Vanamahu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. To that one indivisible consciousness, dwelling in all beings, the seers assign many a noble name. Like the friend of all beings, the eternal companion, the waters of life, the fire of yoga, the sacred atmosphere of existence, the carrier of consciousness, the devourer of death, and the one who shines forth the light. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Niruktiresha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagatcha Akanda Rupastitir Eva Moksho Brahmadvitye Shutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We are broadcasting to you live, to our live streaming audience around the world, those students that have become close to SRV associations, S meaning Sharda, whose image is here, the Divine Mother of the Universe, known as Holy Mother, and Sri Ramakrishna is the R, which is, of course, this avatar, Kali avatar that came in the 1800s and now has a family of some 5.5 million souls following him in a short time. And Swami Vivekananda, whom we're more familiar with because he came to the West in 1893 to bring us these teachings. Teachings means the Vedanta, basically, but the Vedanta in the case of Swami Vivekananda is a very wide umbrella and holds under it all the teachings of India that have, from time out of mind, been attending upon the world. It's just very few people become aware of them in their lifetime. That's because of Maya, or the thick covering of ignorance that obscures people's vision. You would have to open the third eye, as Christ said, if thine eye be single, you shall know the truth. Or Sri Krishna called it the Jnana Chakshu, the eye of wisdom. If thy eye opens, then these two shut, then it's basically meditation, and you're not looking outside anymore, you're looking inside. And that's where all the answers to all the problems are, and it's also where your true nature is. We just chanted to Brahman. Brahman is the word for absolute reality, or God, if you will, in India. And this umbrella of Vedanta covers teachings that maybe we have heard about a little bit in the West, called yoga. Although when we say yoga in India, we mean Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. That is, there's 4 kinds of ways to get in union with God, or in India, God's not outside of you, it's inside. There's no God out here. There's one thing that would settle a lot of people's problems if they knew that God was not in the world. The world is in God. That's how Vivekananda put it. So sometimes Lord Buddha and Kapila and Krishna and Patanjali, the father of yoga, have often been very, very tentative to mention the word God. In India, God doesn't really exist. Most people are looking for God in objects. That's called materialism. You're a materialist if you do that, and you're barking up the wrong tree. Here's the tree, here's you. Oops. So barking up the wrong tree is to look for reality in relativity. Let's be fair, even science has found out that objects are just vibrating particles changing at a billionth of a second, so how real can they be? How real can objects be? And then your senses that behold the objects, how real are those? And when you shut off your senses tonight in deep sleep, doesn't everything go away? Do you remember everything last night? I had a very powerful dream, actually. I met a very holy person, holy man, who was from a different religion. And we talked in a dream. So to me, that's more real than here. I see the dream state is a little bit more real. Most people wouldn't look at it that way. Dreams are figments of your imagination. But we have a teaching in India about Om. It's the word. Even Christ mentioned that to John. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So what that really means is AUM is how you would philosophically, if you wanted to be philosophically correct, you would spell it AUM. OM is okay. But AUM points to A means projection of everything, its appearance, and U means how to sustain it, and M means how to dissolve it. They used to call that creation, preservation, and destruction. And it would even assign gods to it. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Basically, the Guru is Brahma, that is the one who projects everything. Because in India we don't believe in creation. There's no such thing as creation. You can't create something that was never born. And reality is never born. It's self-existence. So you can't create something that was never destroyed. That's why you were never born, because you never died. See? No, you won't have a death because you're birthless. That's your consciousness we're talking about. Your ego, your body, your senses, they come in and out of being. Like tonight, in dream and deep sleep, they change. But you yourself are the witness. You remain looking upon all these changes and you don't change. So Brahma is the one, the great God of projection. So we don't say creation, we say projection. It all came out of the great mind of God, and it'll all go back in. And when it comes out and goes back in, nothing happens. You don't change. And that's the secret of Vedanta, really, is the immutable or changeless, birthless, deathless, timeless, spaceless reality of everything that you're not seeing. Most people aren't seeing. It's not even a matter of belief, because how can you disbelieve your own existence? There you are, aren't you? So your problem is you're believing in change, and you haven't seen the changeless inside of you yet. You haven't stopped breathing, for instance. That just doesn't mean just at death. It means in meditation you stop breathing. 240,000 breaths a day, half that at night. What if you just stopped that breathing process? It's called kumbhaka. You're in a stunned state. So Christ in the wilderness, Buddha under the bo tree, Muhammad on the mount, whoever it was that stopped their breathing process and just sat under a tree or in a desert or on a mountain and saw themselves, didn't breathe for a long time. Maybe you think it's not possible. Lay next to someone at sleep tonight. You lay next to someone, they won't breathe for minutes at a time. All of a sudden, they're back, you see, back into their dream senses. So no brain cells got destroyed, not like drowning or something, you see, where you're in a panic, but you're just in a peaceful, deep state of formlessness. Formlessness is the secret of everything. Is that your true nature is formless, so that's why it doesn't die, and it's never born. Because how can a formless be born and die? It has to take a form, doesn't it? So what if you thought, well, maybe I'm not a form. Maybe I'm formless. And all of a sudden the whole periphery changes. Everything changes around you. Now you're the birthless, deathless, formless Atman looking on everything that changes. And all of a sudden you've seen the truth. And thou shalt see the truth, and you know your Bible, and the truth shall set you free. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So Bible, Quran, New Old Testament, they all fall under the Vedanta umbrella too. Vedanta takes a Christian and makes him a better Christian. Takes a Hindu and makes him a better Hindu. Takes a Buddhist, makes him a better Buddhist. Takes a Jew, makes him a better Jew. So this is the non-duality that's in every religion, but nobody really sees it. And when you see it, then you don't follow it. You see, you say, oh, okay, I understand now, but you don't actually participate in the birthless, deathless nature of your own true being. You keep thinking through your whole life, I'm going to die someday. It's actually not a bad thought to have. Swami Vivekananda said you should meditate on your death. In the West, you've taught that death is a morbid thing. Don't talk about it. So you brush it under the carpet somewhere. But you should think today in your morning meditation and tonight before you go to sleep, I'm about to enter death. That is, everything will die, but I'll be still there. You see people say, I don't believe in reincarnation. Well, you've watched every birth and every death you've had, and here you are. You're still here. See? And if you go into sleep tonight, you die. Deep sleep means no ego, and if you have no ego, you have no self. Because the ego is what's making you run around doing all these silly things you do. See? Many of them not very well thought out. So if the ego goes away, what is there? There's no sense of I anymore, so you're the formless light of consciousness that supports all egos. It's behind all egos. So Lord Brahma is the one who projects all that, you see. Someday you're going to have to go inside and see Lord Brahma and say, will you take this creation away? Because I'm done with it. I'm done dancing, I'm done playing, I'm done taking forms, I'm done dying, I'm done suffering, I'm done experiencing pleasure, I'm done with happiness and sorrow. Those things don't interest me anymore, so take this away. And he will say, sort of like Gandalf, you may pass, you see. You may pass. You'll go beyond the cosmic form then. He has a form. He's a very beautiful form. So it's a very high heaven, Lord Brahma. And it's all within you, because the kingdom of heaven is within you, right? People are still going like this, like there's something out there. But science has at least proven that. You're better off here with 5 elements than up there with only 3. So what's up there you're praying to? You should be praying inside your own self, because that's where the truth is. And you should begin looking at the self as formless when all forms die away and dissolve. Well, that's Shiva's business. So basically, Brahma projects, Vishnu sustains, because we all love Vishnu and his consort Lakshmi, goddess of wealth, because they keep it all there present for us to enjoy. Enjoy means to suffer too. Can't have one without the other. So the Vishnu is sustaining everything, you see. But Lord Shiva comes along and then, okay, it's time for this creation to end. Well, they're going to dissolve it now. It's not an Armageddon in the sense that nothing's coming back. Why? Because it never came in the first place. It can't be destroyed because it was never created. It was projected. And then it gets withdrawn. And then it gets projected again, then withdrawn and projected and withdrawn. That's called yugas. Ages after ages after ages of time, space, name, form, and karma, causality that comes with it. And if you get in a round of that forever, then it's called samsara. You heard of that word in Buddhism? Samsara. Rounds of birth and death, never knowing that you're a birthless, deathless being. So Maya has pulled the wool over your eyes really well for lifetimes after lifetimes. You don't know your true nature. And you're so attached to the form. Father of Yoga calls that clinging to life. Or you could call it fear of death. But how can you have fear of death when you're a birthless, deathless being? Sri Krishna says in the Gita, you should be taking on bodies and giving them up like a child outgrows sets of clothes. See, your body is like sets of clothes. You shouldn't be hanging on to your old, dead, diseased body as if it had something left for you. Give it up. Take on another one if you want. But there's the rub. If you want means you still have desire. And desire is always at the root of embodiment. If you still have desires and you still want to fulfill them, or you think maybe you can fulfill them, then barking up another wrong tree. Desires never get satiated. They can only be fulfilled once you realize your true self. As long as you don't have the true self in line with your inner vision, then you think you're everything else other than the Atman. I'll show you a chart about that. Well, Atman is another name for Brahman in our tradition. It means the true indivisible self. So we cast that in comparison, the indivisible self against the individual self. You see, the individual self is always egoistic, prideful, arrogant, sorrowful, miserable. Back and forth it goes like a ping pong ball. But the indivisible self is constant, eternal, pure, transcendent. There's names that you can look for, words you can look for in English, and you can fairly well describe the indescribable with them. I mean, you'll never be able to pin it down to a word, but maybe Om is the best word then. In the beginning was the word. So that beginning, Christ didn't mean that to be his religion. He didn't believe in origins. He knew when he saw the Almighty Father, after he sat in the wilderness for all those days, and he saw his true nature, and he came out and said, I'm the light of consciousness, I'm the light of the worlds. So he saw what was beyond religion, and he also saw what was beyond cause and effect, or origins. Indians have a great teaching, that is, those we call Hindus, or the Vedic seers might be a better way of putting it, the rishis they were called, is that everything that has an origin is stuck in these rounds of cycles. Lord Buddha, his last teaching was, and he was a Hindu man, by the way, he was Indian. So he got out of the river and sat on the banks, and then he found out he wasn't going around in circles anymore. So if you get out of the river and sit on the banks, then you see everything go by. Eventually you'll see the same thing go by again. and all of a sudden figure out, oh, everything's cyclic, everything is going around in circles. His teaching meant basically you and your ancestors, is what he was talking about. Not just garbage scow going up and down Columbia River, you see. Every time I drive up that, I see it either going up or down. I always think, oh, I see everything's cyclic. Thank you, Lord Buddha, for telling me that. But on a deeper level, it's you and your ancestors are going around in circles. You were someone's father, then you're someone's son, then you're someone's lover, then you're someone's enemy. Depending on what you do in life, you end your life with a lot of baggage, most people. And so they'll bring it back in their next lifetime. It's that simple, really. If you drowned, then you have fear of water in your next life. It's very easy to actually look into this. It's called cosmology. America's big on cosmetology. I said, so forget cosmetology, what you look like, and paint yourself up to be what my teacher used to call a painted meat cake. You'd see Western women, he'd say, painted meat cakes. It wouldn't have anything to do with them, see. But cosmology, that's a whole different thing. See, cosmology in India means that you have 5 elements here, and you had 5 senses that came out of them, and those 10 came out of your dream state with 10 subtle senses and 10 subtle elements, or 5 of each. And then that came out of your mind, and your mind had 4 things in it. And that's 24 things right there. So they get right on their finger, they go, oh, I see how this all happened. It's all a matter of cosmology. And so if I came out with 24 things, if I wanted to turn and go back in, I should be able to trace them, you see, to their connection, like a trail of breadcrumbs. That's what looking inside means, go within. Kingdoms of heaven within. That's all that means. So you need to have some sort of system that you use to get out here. But when you got out here means into the body and into physical things, then you forgot how you got here, you see. How's that? Is that very wise? Because when your body gets old, then you can't make the trip back inside? You didn't store up any provisions for your journey back to the source? You don't have any strength? You can't sit and shut up? All that excitement and all that karma and all that action and all that thing, all the effects that you're carrying with it, you can't just stop those and say, I'm done, and then just see that peace and bliss inside of yourself and go there. You don't have to commit suicide or take a pill or something. It's your true nature in there you're talking about. Truer and truer and truer as it gets deeper and deeper. Well, we were looking about that, and the signs of it are still on the board. I was here 3.5 months ago, and we were looking at the Amritabindu Upanishad. And Upanishad is another one of those beautiful things that's under the umbrella of Vedanta. Actually, Veda Anta, as you divide the word. So Swami Vivekananda said Vedanta will have about a 900-year rise now that he's brought it to us. So we're looking at Vedanta as being the future religion of humanity. When they find out that irreligion has had its time, that churches and temples and so forth are never going to get you enlightenment, they may be a start. Like Vivekananda said once, good to be born in a church, but don't die in a church. See? So you get some sort of influence from religion, that's good, but then you're going to have to sort it out, you see, what's not true, what's mixed, basically. Or what's outright phony, like eternal damnation and nonsense like that. So you're going to have to sort it out. Like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, if you go on a picnic and you have some food and you put it out, you see, you spill a little sugar in the sand there, you see, and you see, oh, there's grains of sugar mixed in with the sand. You come back after you went swimming and you see the ants have taken the sugar and left the sand, you see. That's what you have to do with religion. You have to take what's true in it and discriminate away the rest. Discrimination is not a word on racial problem in Vedanta. It's almost the beginning of a spiritual life is discrimination. It's called viveka. And that's why he took it as his name before he came from India. He was calling himself Satchidananda, the bliss of pure existence, pure knowledge, and pure bliss, he was calling himself. But now he said, well, I have to go over there where the Westerners are, and they're really in a bad way. See, they're rich and poor. Rich with materials and don't know anything about God. So I have to go over there. I think I'll call myself Vivekananda. So that's the bliss of knowing the difference between what is real and what's not real. The sugar and the sand. And you have to know it in the scriptures. You have to know it in yourself. You have to know it in the world. You have to discriminate. Doesn't it sound like build your house on rock, bedrock, and not sand, Jesus said? Or something like that. See, birds have nests, foxes have holes, but you don't have any place to lay your head here. So the earth was never your home, ever. And in fact, if you looked at the cosmology, you'd find out the earth came out of you. See, like we just said, the mind thinks, and it creates these dream senses. You come out into dream, and these dream elements, because you see in a dream, and you swim in a dream, and fly in a dream, and so forth. And then it comes out a little further to the gross state, and all of a sudden these things became solid, and now you have a body, and you have 5 tactile senses, and you're moving about objects and bumping into them and so forth, getting pleasure and pain from them. So it's just a march outward from your true formless self. So you put this all together. You yourself are projecting it, you yourself are sustaining it, and you yourself should be able to dissolve it at the end and be yourself. And in fact, it would be nice if you were yourself during all 3 acts. If you could somehow create, preserve, and destroy, and still be yourself. That is, be an enlightened soul. My teacher used to say that's a jivan mukta. See, the goal of spiritual life in India is to be a jivan mukta. Jiva means embodied, mukta means free. So you should be free while you're embodied. Not just, my teacher used to say, I don't care for a post-mortem emancipation. It's very clever. I don't care for freedom after I die. I'm free now. If I practice thinking I'm going to be free after I'm dead, then I'm transgressing the law of eternal existence, that I am that. Tat Tvamasi was the way they said it in Sanskrit in ancient. That thou art. You are that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say there's a deer running around looking for that beautiful scent on the wind, but it's in its own navel. You know what that's called? Musk. They make incense out of it. So there's musk in a deer's navel, and it catches its smell on the wind, you see, so it goes running around looking for it. It's in its own self. See? So all of this is dreaming. It's mass collective mental dreaming. Life is. It's not real. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Shall I sing it to you? Life is but a dream. Well, somebody had a good idea with that. But from dreams awake, from bonds be free. Know the truth. Thou art he, thou art she. Oh, my teacher used to say that, tantric. You see, you should know the truth that the men are Shiva. You know, they're the god of destruction. You know, they put everything into a state of dissolution, and they come out of it as their true nature. They're strong. So you should be. Weakness, if you're weak, you can't be spiritual. You can barely be religious. And women are Shakti. So Shiva and Shakti is the idea. Tantra is another one of those beautiful things that falls under the umbrella of the Neo-Vedanta that Swamiji brought in the sage, Vivekananda brought in the sage. So Tantra is very big on the divine couple, you see, and the worship of the divine couple. So that's your ideal, as long as you're in form. If you're a monk, it would be probably different, you see, like he was. If you're a monk, then you would say, I and my father are one. There's no two in existence. Or you'd get to the one through the two. So back to Swamiji coming west and bringing these teachings to us, and preservation, sustenance, and withdrawal. There's all just a tempest in a teapot. Isn't that what Shakespeare said? Tempest in a teapot. Ooh, look at all that. See, all of creation, all preservation, all destruction is going on. It's non-actual. Can you expand your mind large enough to wrap it around that? Because if you can, then you can be a Jivan Mukta, can be a living, liberated being like my teacher was, and like Swami Vivekananda was. Didn't have to come here, and didn't come here pulled by the strings of desire. Came here to waken people up. Utistata jagrata prapya varani bodhata ksharasyadara nashita durgatyaya durga patastat kavaya vadanti. Vivekananda used to wake people up, actually in the morning, get them up to meditate. Come, open your door. Utistata jagrata. Wake up, you see. It means arise, awake. Stop not till the goal is reached. Approach the wise teachers and learn from them, for difficult and as sharp as a razor's edge is the spiritual path, and it's very difficult to navigate. So say the wise. That's a beautiful Upanishadic saying. So Upanishads are comprise this ancient, you might say the very staff of that umbrella that's holding it are the Upanishads. There's 108 left. There must have been hundreds and hundreds prior to the time of Vedavyas. Vedavyas, affectionately known as the father of Vedanta, gathered these up so that we didn't lose them all at a time, at a period of time. And so now the Upanishads guide us. They're non-dual in nature. It's not that sand and sugar you were just talking about. You don't find any sand here. You don't have to go through and filter out untrue things, but you do have to go through and contemplate what the hell they're saying, because it's a little bit couched in some ancient wisdom here. So some of the modern knowledge, especially in a infantile culture like America, we're talking about a couple hundred years old, and India, timeless really, but 5,000 or 10,000 years old. They've been contemplating these teachings for a long time, and they've distilled them over time. Even Buddha was 550 years before Christ in India. So that's not very old in India time. You can go way farther back to Sri Krishna and Lord Vashishta, and all the way back to Lord Brahma again. It's timeless. But to give you an idea, and it would just take us a minute, I'll just read you the 9 slokas we've already studied last year. By the way, this Upanishad is called Amritabindu. So they each have very beautiful names. We studied the Svetashvatar Upanishad, which is great, enlightened soul named for Svetashvatar. You have to realize that India has seen hundreds of Christs. And so beings that had fantastic powers, and like, for instance, Shankara lived in 700 AD. He knew all the scriptures by heart by the time he was 8. That's a lot of scriptures in India. And he was teaching graybeards by the time he was 12. So these young phenomena, these spiritual phenomena, they're quite obvious in India throughout the ages. We call them avatars. Sometimes you've heard that. Not the Hollywood connotation. That's imagination. But basically this visualization that goes back to these great souls that have appeared before us and brought these Upanishads. So let me read you the first 9 slokas that we've studied. The mind is chiefly spoken of as 2 kinds, pure and impure. The impure mind is that which is possessed of desire. The pure mind is that which is free of desire. That's 1 sloka, per sloka. Amritabindu means, like a dot you would put here as a bindi if you're a Hindu woman, right? But deeper than that surface thing is the bindu, is basically the word. In the beginning was the word. That very word is called the bindu, and it's a apex. When it gets split, then all the worlds come out of it. It's not just metaphysical or something. Think of vibration, and then you can understand it better. If a bell is still, then the sound of the bell is in the bell, right? All you have to do is strike it. So when you strike the bell, the sound that's inherent in the bell comes out. Tum. So ta would be creation. Ah would be preservation. Would be dissolution. So the bell has a tone, starts with an impact, lasts for a while, and then dissolves back into the air around it. See, that's funny because most people think, oh, the tone, they're out there measuring it, you see, like my friends, the recording engineers. So basically they're out there, oh, the sound dissipated, it's gone. No, actually, get a clue. It's back in the bell again. See? So if you think that it went out and dissolved, then you believe in death. So you believe that everything ends in death. But if you have the acumen, the intelligence, see, to know that, oh, actually it went back to the bell, you see, then you can get it as many times as you want. So you have to be up on your study of vibration metaphysically and spiritually. I'm from Hawaii, you see, so my brother played with Don Ho. Don, you're a ho, see, we used to call him. So Don Ho had this song called Tiny Bubbles, right? Tiny bubbles in the wine make me feel happy, you see. So he used to say, tiny booty in your mind makes you feel silly, never divine. So we've made up our own words to it, you see. Tiny booty means you've got this very tiny intellect. You don't have much intellect in you, see. So you're not getting a clue to where the sound came from. They call that the unstruck sound. The unstruck sound of home, because nobody ever strikes it. It's always humming by itself, like the scriptures say, like a beehive with thousands of bees in it, like a big bee log, you see. It's always humming, 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 and all the worlds come out of that and disappear back into it, and come out of it and disappear back into it over time. But nobody has that larger booty. They have the tiny booty. So if you develop a larger booty, then you begin to see back to the source of origins of things. Here I am discoursing on the sloka, and I wanted to read you the 8. So that first one is about mind, impure and pure. Pure, free of desire; impure, has desire. When India speaks in terms of pure and impure, they don't mean moral and immoral. Pure means close to the source, impure means far away from the source. So it's not a judgment or a criticism from a religious standpoint on your morality or your immorality. It's just how close you are to God or how far away you've gotten from God. So the closer you are to God, the purer your mind is. And the farther away you get, the more impure it becomes. It becomes invested with impurities. That should be obvious to everyone. Sloka 2 says, "It is indeed the mind that is the cause of men's bondage and liberation. The mind that is attached to sense objects leads to bondage, while disassociated from sense objects, it tends to lead to liberation." So they think. That's the wise. Anything unclear about an Upanishad yet? Is it all pretty straightforward? Third sloka. "Since liberation is predicated of the mind devoid of desire for sense objects, therefore the mind should always be made free of such desire by the seeker after liberation." So you should tend to rid yourself of your desires, not accumulate them. As soon as you're free of desires, then your mind will be in a peaceful state. And you can sit like this all day. And you can read the scriptures. You can be peaceful. You can be content. You can be, yes, if you want to, be happy. Although happy is very overrated. Sloka 4. When the mind with its attachment for sense objects gets annihilated, is fully controlled within the heart, it thus realizes its own essence, and then that supreme state is gained. So concentrate on the heart. That same Upanishad we studied last time, Atharva Upanishad says, Adihi sa samyoga nimitta hetu, kala strikala dekala pidristaha. Devam swatitastam upasya purvam. So, a beautiful sloka in the Atharva Upanishad means, meditate upon the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart. Where have you ever heard anything like that given as scripture, advice, or even religion, except in India? It's telling you to meditate on the Lord as your own self seated in your heart. So you are that. Why are you running around looking for God somewhere out there and thinking it different from you? You are that God. You are God. But if you're coming from the standpoint from the ego, you're not that God at all. You're as far away from God as you can possibly be when you think yourself to be a separate existence. You have to be one with that. Intrinsic oneness. It's not something that you become, it's something that you are. See, so if you're thinking of becoming, you're practicing. But when you realize you are, then you're perfect. So practice would be the way to perfection, but it's not the goal yet. And if you don't practice, you won't find your way. So Holy Mothers used to say, self-effort and grace have to go hand in hand. God's grace is shining on everything. The wind of God's grace is always blowing, but you have to raise your sail to catch it, is what they said. So raising your sail is self-effort, you see. So self-effort gets you grace. It's not coming from outside of you, from some God somewhere. Oh, please give me grace, God. You have to find it inside yourself and then give it to yourself. This is the voice of freedom I'm speaking. There's a book called Vedanta, Voice of Freedom. It strips away all the superstitions of religion and brings out that sugar or that sweetness that is your very nature, that is you. Only you can free yourself. So isn't that what they just said? Therefore the mind should always be made free of such desire by the seeker of liberation and realize its own essence. It goes on to say, the mind should be controlled to that extent in which it gets merged in the heart. This is jnana, realization. And this is also dhyana, meditation. All else is just argumentation and verbiage. So get that wisdom from your guru, from your teacher, meditate on it and be free. Meditate upon the Lord as thine own self seated in your heart, you see. So I must sit, meditate. Forget the third eye for now, that's for later. Just meditate right there in the heart. That's the fourth chakra, the fourth lotus. If I can open that, then I free myself from the three lower worlds. That's heaven, earth, and hell, basically. If you put it in Christian speak. You free yourself from that. I don't seek a post-mortem emancipation, so my teacher didn't seek heaven. Vedantists don't seek heaven. Heaven is transient. Heaven is a place that you return from to hell or to earth in the rebirth, reincarnation process. You want beyond that. If you seek heaven, then you're seeking pleasure, free of pain. But what about Krishna in the Gita saying you must go beyond pleasure and pain? You must go beyond life and death, virtue and vice, good and bad. All those things are dualities that keep you trapped. So you want to be non-dual. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 arms, 2 legs. Enough of that. I want to be non-dual. he goes on to say, and that's a very good sloka, Jnana and Dhyana, the Supreme Soul is neither to be thought of as being external, nor unworthy to be thought of as something unpleasant, nor is it to be thought of as sense pleasure, but it should be thought of as the essence of bliss itself. That Brahman, which is yourself, which is free from all partiality, is attained in that state. You want to assume the non-dual state. Like if you saw a bowl of wax fruit, it would make you hungry. See? But when you go and pick it up, you realize it's the fake thing. See? So you have to go out to the store and get the real thing. So you have to assume something that you think is real from something that's really false, and then approach it, find out that it's false. Well, that's what you do when you go to the mind. The mind is also false. Didn't it just say it has to be wiped out? See? And merged in the heart? So you have to get beyond your mind, your tiny booty. See? The tiny booty is under the control of the ego. See? And any time the ego has learned something, it says, that's mine. Well, that too is mine. Pretty soon you've got this raging politician. So he wants everything for himself, or for his own country or something. So basically that's the ego out of control. But you say, that doesn't belong to me. That's what the yogi says. Oh, I don't want that. That's going to cause me too much problem. I don't want that possession. No, I don't like pleasure either, thank you. So you have to give away. Give it all away. Be free. Not be attended by anything. Happens right on down to your clothes. There's the Nagas in India walk around naked. They don't want anything hanging on them. So that's sloka 6. Then 7 and 8 and 9 I think we took last time I was here. 7 says, one should duly practice concentration on Om, which means its letters. Then meditate on Om without its letters. Finally, on the realization of this latter form of meditation on Om, the idea of the non-entity is attained as entity. So first you say, well, I have to meditate upon Om, A-U-M, I told you. So A means your waking state, U means your dreaming state, and M means your deep sleep state. So now you know what Christ is talking about. In the beginning was the Word is with God, and the Word was God. See, so that's 3 different things. It sounds much like creation, preservation, and destruction. First you meditate on it as something that produces things, and then something that goes subtle and sustains them, like in a dream state, and then where it's all gone, oops. See, there's my tripping stone, is when I go into deep sleep, there's no more form anymore, and I don't remember my name. I even forgot my children. I even forgot my bank account, which is more important than my children. See? So what happened when I went formless last night for approximately, well, if you're fortunate, 3 or 4 hours, so you get very, very deep healing in deep sleep. You don't get that in dream and waking. In fact, you get the opposite. Lack of peace, nervousness, and stress. Most people. So what happened to me in deep sleep? So the seers of India saw that. There's actually a beautiful sloka about that. Te dhyan yoga nugata apasyan devatma shaktim svagunayar nagudam yaha karanani nikilani tani kalatma yuktanya adidishtad yekaha. Practicing deep meditation, the ancient seers of India saw the Devatma Shaktim, the divine energy, existing everywhere, in everything. But though she was clothed in her own modes of nature, she was always free. And they hadn't realized this due to the limitations of their own intellect, their own tiny buddhi. See? They had to expand their buddhi. What do you think Buddha means? It's totally expanded intellect that gave up possession and gave up limitation and took on the whole world and all the ancestors and the gods and goddesses and the deities and the Trinity, right on up to the Supreme Brahman, to the gateway of formlessness, you see. So Te Dhyan Yoga, they practiced the yoga of meditation, just like this sloka told us. And they cut time down and saw it was an illusion. Deep sleep, there's no time, right? There may be for someone else who's not in deep sleep, but that's really beside the point. For you, it stopped. And at will and death, too. It's like these bardos, which I'll show you in a minute, as soon as we finish this. So I'm scratching the surface of these slokas as we go through them. Each sloka I could give you a week retreat on, and keep unwrapping it, and keep unwrapping it, and keep unwrapping it, and bring it back to its beginning again. And then we could start over on the next sloka and do the things. So this is scratching the surface of the scriptures. This is what the Guru does for you if you don't have the time to do it yourself, or you can't do it yourself. We'll unwrap these for you, and this is what religion has lost. Beautiful teachings on the eternal nature of the soul have become replaced by eternal damnation instead. That's not acceptable. You can't go to hell, nor can you go to heaven, because you were never born. That's the truth of the matter. They sing that. Shankara, the child prodigy I was just talking to you about. Na mrityor na shanka, na me jati beda, pita naiva me naiva, mata majanma. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. We always end with the word. So Namrityur Nashanka, Name Jati Beda. Mrityur's death, Jati's birth. So basically, I was Namrityur, I have no death. Na means no. I have no death. Why is that? Because I was never born. Birth and death are a duality, you see. So he just truncates them, you see, and it steps beyond them. And now all of a sudden he's at the truth. Isn't the truth supposed to be simple? So why are you believing in birth and death? And the whole culture is believing in birth and death, and the whole world and the ancestors all believing in birth and death. And if you came back from heaven, you said, well, I remember my past lifetime, and I died many times. Well, how could you have died? You're still here. So you're missing the point. Don't ponder on life and death and birth. Go beyond them. Your soul is birthless and deathless. That's in two words, Namrityur. Then he goes, Name Jati Beda. And I was never born, I never died because I had never had a birth. The next line was, Pita Naiva Me Naiva Mata Manja. What's Mata? What's it sound like? Mother. And what's Pita then?
Father.
I had no father, I have no mother. How could I when I was never born? So he left home when he was 10 years old. Bye, Ma. Who else does that remind you of? Jesus, 14, on the steps of the Jewish temple. Where have you gone, son? What happened to you? I must be about my father's business. I don't have father and mother. So these souls are born free, live free, pass away free. Freedom is their watchword. Freedom is their state of existence. Neither am I bound, nor am I a worshipper, neither am I a seeker of liberation, nor am I one who has attained liberation. I am causeless, birthless, deathless. The wise one, knowing this, becomes free. Sloka 8. That alone is Brahman, without component parts, without doubts, and free of taint. Realizing I am that Brahman, one becomes the immutable Brahman. Those who realize Brahman become Brahman. So if you see Jesus or Buddha or Krishna or walk around, well, there's God in form, you have to say. And they're going to want to get beyond their forms too. Look what happened to their form. Look what happened to Christianity over 2,000 years. All of a sudden, where's the mention of the Almighty Father? Hello? If I'm my Father one, then why am I trying to become one with the Son? Or call him back. He's probably come back 3 or 4 times already and you didn't recognize him. Does he have to be born in the Middle East with a beard for you to think that he's Jesus again? Either he's never coming back again because he's had enough of you and your ignorance and your penchant for rebirth. He tried to teach you once and you didn't listen, or he's come back many times and tried to get you free. Buddha said that. Have no hope for me forevermore. I'm gone forever. It means he's not coming back again. Once was enough. A great light like Buddha, there's never seen a soul like Buddha in this world. So a great light like that, probably not going to come back. So you are that Brahman. They come to teach you that. Start thinking that way, at least. It's a start. Like the bowl of wax fruit over there, Start thinking about it. And that'll be a good step forward to realizing the truth. I have no birth, I have no death, I have no father, I have no mother. Those are all dreams I had that were not true in the end, were they? And they're going to be not true again in this lifetime. Sometimes they become literally not true. You're not my son anymore. Well, you're not my father either. See, I mean, it would be nice to take that philosophically rather than in bitterness. But whatever way you take it, it's true. Jesus said something like, your children are not your own. They're souls under your care. So if you're going to be reborn, you're probably going to want to take parents who will teach you this Dharma. Sooner the better. Like they do in Tibet. See, they look for Dalai Lama's next incarnation. Find him when he's like 2 years old. Ask the parents, will you give me your baby? Where else does that happen? See? And they say, yes. I've got a couple others, you can have this one. It's not real anyway. Just a little bag of flesh with some filth in it. Here, you take it. Maybe you can wake it up. But that's Dalai Lama there, you see. So that's a soul who's come back on purpose. And you can wake up its wisdom in a matter of months. That's why Shankara knew the scriptures when he was 8. His teacher woke him up to that. And finally, 9, which we took last time I was here at the end. Brahma is, without doubt, beyond reason and analogy, beyond proof, and causeless, knowing which the wise one becomes free. And when we talked about that, we left off with this chart, if you remember. That is the concomitants, the complements and the immutables of yourself. Basically, what could you say that yourself is? If you wanted somebody to come forward and tell you, well, what is this Atman you're talking to me about? Well, we said it was Sarvatantra. It's unbounded freedom. It's unbounded freedom. That's you. We're talking about you now, okay? Sit up and pay attention. Huh? We're not talking about something out in space or something you're going to realize later. This is your nature. You're free. You have infinite power. You have perfect omniscience. You have integral knowledge. You're eternally contented, and you are perpetual existence. Do you believe me? Are you hearing this? This is your true nature. Katha Upanishad says, not that which people worship here. There's like a series of 8 or 10 slokas in the Katha Upanishad. Not that which people worship here. Not that which people worship here. Not that which people worship here. About 8, the ending of every sloka ends with that refrain. So what people worship here, you're not that. What is it they worship here? Power, pleasure, money, and so forth. Not that which people worship here. These are what you are, here. And as far as the immutables, you are absolute knowledge, a natural state of grace, mature dispassion, self-awareness, supreme lordship, abundant creativity. Musicians like that one, don't they? Inconceivable power, immutable stability, non-dual truth, and full dominion. All that I see, you see, belongs in. This has come out of the self. It's all self-manufactured. I think I have a series of classes this year, sometimes called The Secret of Self-Storage. So I got that by driving along the freeway. You see these self-storage places. You get a big kick out of that. Because they're capital S, you see. If you put a small s, that would mean the ego. The ego stores up things. But this is what the great self with the uppercase S has in it, you see. Vast, conditionless, free, owns everything without being attached to it. That's, everything has come out of you. Kingdoms of heaven are within you, and you let them out. You might want to think about that next time. Should I let that cat out of the bag? Or that tiger? So we looked at this right at the end, but we didn't quite finish it last. I looked at the end of the film, YouTube film, or the live streaming, and saw that we were right at the end when we finished the last class about 3.5 months ago. I was here at Sloka 9, and this is what we were concluding. So Sri Ramakrishna says here, to conclude it further, there is one supreme essence called Paramatman. It is formless. But the seekers of the formless often make this one mistake. They forget that it is also imbued with infinite power. Living beings, the universe, mind, intelligence, love, renunciation, knowledge, these are the manifestations of its power. Thus I accept not only the formless Brahman, but also Maya, the universe, and its living beings. He was a unique soul, Sri Ramakrishna. 1836 to 1886, 50 years. The avatar of the Divine Mother, they call him, with this family of over 5 million, growing all the time, whom I've worshipped since I was 19. And I found him, and then he was my ideal, and I took initiation into his order. And that was the kind of being he was, or he is, you could say, is that he doesn't just accept the formless and trash the world. He sees that everything has come out of that formless. The world is a part of it, like waves are part of an ocean. But if you stay on the surface of the ocean, you get tossed about by the waves. So I learned to surf. Literally, I did, in the big waves of Hawaii. But philosophically speaking, the waves of creation, preservation, and destruction are often arising in cycles and deluding people, pulling them back into delusion and Maya. So in order to do that, you're going to have to realize this formless that's beyond it. That's one of the mistakes the dualistic schools make, even in India, I think, is that they say, well, now that I've found Krishna, or now that I've found my guru and so forth, I'm satisfied, I'm happy. They don't go all the way to formless reality and have the vision, I and my Father are one, like Jesus said. That set him apart from other beings. So you have to have that non-dual vision. That's a requisite, a main requisite for the path we call Advaita Vedanta. So we looked at this in accordance with Sloka 9. But we'd also yes, I promise you then that we could take a page out of the book of Tibetan Buddhism called, and in order to do that, we're going to have to learn this word bardo. So if you have words in your language for the path of spirituality, then you're a step ahead of most other people. But the problem is that we don't in English have any words like Maya or Samsara, or even when we look for freedom, we have to borrow something like enlightenment. But you can be enlightened about physics, or you can be enlightened about math, or something. So it doesn't really cover it. But when you say the word moksha in India, everyone knows, well, that means spiritual freedom. There is a word for it. So if you're talking about reincarnation, and you have to use the word reincarnation, then if you use that in scientific circles, they're thinking about transmigration or transformation, like flowers coming again and again, or trees coming again and again, and so forth. So they're always, it's always anthropomorphic. You're always like putting it on a form. But when you talk about getting free from embodiment, see, then you'd have to use 4 or 5 words for that, right? So in Tibet, they have this word called bardo. So a bardo would be a segment of time that you should become aware of. It's a phase of time. In Tantra, they call this kalas. Kala is time. Kalas is that it comes in cycles. So most people think time. All right, I'm somewhat aware of that. See, 24 hours in a day and so forth. But they don't think of cycles of time. But they think, well, maybe there's only one cycle of time. It's called 4,320,000,000 years long, and I started out as a chordate and then became a primate, and basically I was always a physical person who went along with nature on the slow ride for 4 billion years and became who I am today. But my teacher is saying, if they're trying to convince you that if you want to see your relatives, you have to go to a zoo. See? He said, we trace our relatives inside of us in India. We don't trace them outside in a phase of time. We can go trace our lineage back to Krishna, back to Vishishta, back to the great avatars, because we always were divine. We never were an animal or a plant or a cell or anything physical. How can the spirit be physical? It's spirit. It's like we try and teach this to the kids. You put colored oil and water in it, cap it off in a jar, shake it, and it mixes, right? We tell them to watch it. 45 seconds later, goodness, see, they don't mix. Oh, you're wrong. So it's like matter and spirit do not mix. They just seem to for about 45 seconds or 45 lifetimes. So you've been wrong this whole time, saying, I'm nature. It's actually, nature has come out of you, and you're the Supreme Soul. It's all been a product of your own dreaming process. And you put it together and come out into a form and forgot that you did it. It's sort of like a wizard creates a world with a magic wand. He's so amazed he drops his wand and he gets into it and forgets who created it. And then he may have a deja vu one day. You say, gee, maybe this isn't real. Oh, where's that wand, So, you can't get out of it. So that's you. See? There's this great wizard. It's called Manas, this great mind. Yeah, it may have a little booty right now. You see. But you got to expand that booty so it will break down this lesser mind and become the great mind that these souls are. Well, they've done it. They're telling you how they did it. You know it's actual. So my point is you have to have a word for it. So in order to get yourself out of the embodied process, you need to know a word in Tibetan Buddhism. Now Tibet received India's teachings about probably 700 AD, when Marpa brought them from India, from Europa, and gave them to Milarepa. That's how the story goes, you see. It had to go across the Himalayas. That was even hard to do for Dalai Lama to escape the Red Chinese, but think about 1,300 years ago trying to get over those mountains. That's what Marpa did to bring the teachings of India to Milarepa and gave it to him. So that's the kind of the flowering of Tibet, of India's Dharma in Tibetan Buddhism, and then they started studying things. Well, one of the things they majored in the study was reincarnation. Very interested in that. It has to do with origins, which I'll show you either before the half or after the half. But you can see that here, this Tibetan teacher, whom I spoke to many times, I kind of consider him one of my Tibetan teachers. He's Jamgon Khantrul Rinpoche said that the soul, you have to know what bardos are. Bardos are periods of time, and then you have to stand back with them and look at them. Like, say, your high school. Are you done with high school now?
Yeah.
How'd that go for you?
It was interesting.
I hated it. College was better because I was always liking to be free. But, your high school period would be one bardo, you might say. See? And you're growing up, grade school would be another bardo and so forth. So it's a period of time, but they're looking at it more in terms of how the soul reincarnates. I want to say, what happened after I died? And how did I get back into the body? That bardo became interesting to them. Because they knew there was a transmigrating bit of consciousness called a soul that moved from place to place. Now Buddha told you that you don't move from place to place. When you wake up, then you don't go anywhere. Your soul's already everywhere. I mean, take the case of dewdrops. Does the sun have to move into them? See, it's already there, shining in every dewdrop in the morning, naturally, see. So that's consciousness shining in everything, all the time. You don't even see it, it's so swift. And it's without inception. It's like you wake up from deep sleep last night, and all of a sudden I'm back here. Oh, really? Am I really back here? Where is here? It's in myself, see. I didn't come out to an outer world. The outer world came out of me. And I had to make sure I provided for it so that I could have a place to go, and that was all a dream. So coming and going are all dreams. You don't go anywhere. You stay in one place. And that's what meditation is, isn't it? Isn't that why people meditate? Is it to have a vision of God? Well, good luck with that. You are that God, so have a vision of yourself. But as far as meditation goes, it's just stopping your mind from thinking, basically. That's how the Jains and the Buddhists and other masters of meditation talk about it. Just stop thinking. So it's really, born young and your father says, would you start thinking? Dumb, gives you a slap. So you start thinking. You go to a meditation master, would you stop thinking? Says, you can't win for losing, you see. So when meditation comes, you cut time down, you cut vibration of thought out, and you sit, like Buddha did under the bo tree for 49 days or something? And you see a lot of things happen to yourself in that time. And you see the origin, where you came from, and you see how you fell into this appearance of moving. Swami Vivekananda said it very nicely. He says, where is the time in which the soul will come when all of time is in the soul? And where's the space that the soul will come and go from when all of space is in the soul? See? So you're just running around inside of your own self like that musk deer looking for a scent on the winds. And when you stop that, then you're an enlightened soul. That's called projecting, see, we just said, or creating. It's non-actual. It's something that happens in the great mind first, then it happens in the mind of the deities, then it happens in the mind of the celestials, then it happens in the mind of the ancestors, finally it happens in the mind of human beings. So that march out is the kingdoms of heaven within. You just went through in gradations to find yourself here with a mind that's projecting everything and forgetting that you projected it too, like that poor wizard without a wand. So Vedanta wakens you up to that fact. You're the source and origin of everything that's here. It's all inside of you. And when you realize that, you become everyone else. Zen calls that ordinary man's consciousness, Zen Buddhism. So it's not like you're special or something. See? You just realize the commonality of everything. It's like commonality means, in a very special sense, there's that oneness that's so cliche. It's inherent oneness. And if you say oneness, then it doesn't quite work. You have to say not two-ness or something, see? Because it never became one. It always was one from its inception. So now I'm tripping over words trying to explain something you can't explain, which Zen is very good at. So, bardos. So let's look at this before the break. We have about 10 minutes. And then I want to show you the whole system I just talked about. This is in terms of a transmigrating soul. So they're interested in what happens. So they say, let's see if there's a... You can see it. My friend Gary Dickens painted this image. I found out just recently he passed away, 2010 or something. And he passed away like this. He was sitting up against the wall. They walked in, they hadn't seen him for a couple of days, and his body was sitting there in seated position. He painted lots of beautiful images like this. Always listening to my music, he said. I like to paint listening to your music. So it was a good meeting of musician and painter. So you can see here, after death, he says, there's a duration of 7 days, and then there's another duration of 14 days, and then there's another duration of 28 days. You ever wondered what happened to your dear old granny when she left the body, or your best friend who committed suicide in high school or whatever? What really happens after they leave the body? So Tibet has studied that in their meditation and come up with these teachings. So you see, they're called bardos. And Jamgon Khantrul Rinpoche says, all three of these states are a very good time for you to realize your true nature. Because after that 24 days, you'll just be reborn again. And did you remember your true nature when you were born? No. Did your parents tell you about it? No. So when's the time you're going to wake up to it? Until you find your way to the door of a guru, like I did with my Swami. And of course, by then I already had an inkling of what was going on, and he just corroborated it. Yes, you're right. You're the Atman. Be free. You got it. And then go and try and help others to get free, see? So those three states are a good time to realize what they're calling here your Buddha nature. Tathagata Garbha. See, it's a big long word. Tathagata Garbha pervades all beings in quantity as well as quality. It is primordial essence which is never defiled. It becomes obscured, however, when an individual engages in negative actions and accumulates karma which prevents recognition of it. So people are preventing a vision of their own self by acting out of accordance with their true nature, doing acts that confuse themselves and others, and then of course you're not going to see anything. So you have to keep that third eye, that clarity of vision, Khyati Yoga calls it, and realize that that same soul exists in everyone, both in quality and in quantity. That's good to contemplate. That is, there's no difference in the soul in any of us. From saint to sinner, sun shines alike on them, they say in Christendom, right? Well, that's a very good teaching philosophically, too. The same Atman is in Hitler as in you. See? Hitler just got into his own version of a bad dream and caused a lot of suffering from his own confusion. And people are doing that in their own little worlds, too. making a mess out of things. And they should be just remaining clear, pure, because that's who they really are. You know yourself, know your true self. It's the same in Hinduism as in Christianity. So that's Tathagata Garbha, another beautiful word. It's like Garbha is like unborn essence. A mass of it. It's amassed. It's boundaryless, so you can't find the end of it. And it's also a mass of pure conscious awareness or light. You'd be more apt to see it as light if you're a visionary. If you're a mystic, you'll hear it. See, the mystics travel by the way of sound. The visionaries by sight, but inward sight and sound. So you see there, the bardo of the moment of death. The Rinpoche comes to your door, you're dying, and you heard his teachings during your life. So he comes down the road, the village, as he walks in, sits by the side of your bed, and after you've died, and guides you. He'll actually speak to your dead body. So if the children and wife are sitting there crying, he says, please leave the room. He said, why? Because I'm trying to communicate with him. He's dead. No, he has a subtle body. His gross body's dead, but he has a subtle body. His subtle body is basically your mind. You live in your mind. I mean, tonight in dream you certainly do, don't you? And so deep sleep would be a mind without seeds. So you've gone inside, so you have another body in there. See, that's your thinking body. It's really quite formless. Or the forms there are thoughts rather than objects. Which is why this became an object, because I thought about it. Nature couldn't produce that alone. Didn't it take some intelligence? More than a tiny booty to produce things like this? So it all came out of me, there's no doubt about that. All of nature came out of the soul. So in that case then, at the moment of death, what's happening? Earth dissolves into water. Water dissolves into fire. Fire dissolves into air. Air dissolves into consciousness, or you could say ether. And as that happens, those lacking training may panic at the moment of death. So it is important to understand that awareness is not changing, only the elements are dissolving. So you've had a 16-year, 20-year, 50-year, 80-year, 100-year, if you live long enough, romance with the 5 elements. And as you've done that, you've created a lot of karma with them. You swam, you used fire, in good and bad ways. You used the elements, see, and in mixed ways too. So now you come to the end of your life and you're having a hard time giving up your body, because the body is made of 5 elements. This is how they conclude it, you see. So you want to become a master of death, or master death, and then realize eternal life. In their tradition, this is what you do. You look at the bardo at the moment of death, and you find out how people are dying and what they're, and in meditation you follow them where they go. So the Rinpoche is sitting there at the side of, oh, yeah, don't go toward that pig body. You don't want to do that. See? Stay away from that woman's body if you don't want to be reborn. See? So it's like following the soul inside, you see. Oh, you see those lights in the distance? Those are called the Shambhala worlds. They're rainbow worlds. Try and go towards those. Or better yet, see that light beyond those lights, which is colorless. That's the Buddha light. Go towards that. But he can't make it to the Buddha light. He's got too many desires. He's got too many baggage of karma, you see. So he falls back from the Buddha light. And he says, okay, well now go towards the rainbow lights. And his soul, particular soul, falls back from those. Can't make it there either. Those would be like heavens. Like the 7 lokas in Hinduism, or the patalas in Buddhism. So he falls back from those. So now he has to review his life, see what he did, find out why he got bound to the soul, and be reborn again. That's like last best option, is you have to be reborn again. But maybe this time, with the guidance of a Rinpoche, you'll be reborn with a little bit more memory. Extremely important word, again, like Bardo, is smriti. This is why the Hindu won't believe in I was once an ape or monkey, because they actually don't believe in the outside. They believe in the inside. And the inside is in their memory. So your memory, smriti, is very important in your life. You have to create a retentive memory, a memory that remembers everything, and particularly the teachings you got from your Rinpoche. You remember that and you take it in to death with you. You don't panic and forget everything and throw everything to the four winds. They'll just, the next mantra you hear will be wah, 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 and that'll be your voice as you hang upside down, getting spanked on the butt or whatever they do nowadays. So, very important to remember that. In the water dissolving to fire phase, all experiences become like mirages. Moving images take on a dreamlike nature. So imagine yourself giving up this world. Earth is dissolved into water. Now water is dissolving to fire. And this is how you're having to be forced from the body. It'd be better if you just gave up the body easily, like the masters. But no, you're being forced from the body. The five elements are being extracted out of your mind by the devil with hot pincers, like, you see. You're clinging to them. Oh, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, you see. Then fire dissolves into air. Consciousness appears like a flame, but that flame is constantly flickering. Then air dissolves into consciousness. Awareness becomes like a lamp with no longer flickering, like a lamp undisturbed by the wind. So as you let go of earth, water, fire, and you get to air, well, air means lungs, air means breathing. People panic there too. Oh, I'm not breathing anymore. Well, you didn't breathe in deep sleep. You didn't breathe in deep meditation. Why are you attached to this pair of bellows, fleshy bellows in your chest, of your body, you see? Give it up. Quit breathing. Sit, be peaceful. So if they don't panic and they follow this process inside to die, to a conscious death, then basically they reach this undisturbed state where the light is constant. Now they're in a state of unwavering. What's that noise? So air dissolving into consciousness. Now back to earth dissolving to water. The external sign is weakness. The internal sign is foggy perception. When water dissolves into fire, the external sign is dryness of mouth. The external sign is dreamlike experiences. When fire dissolves into air, the eternal sign is loss of warmth. Fire. And the external sign, or internal sign is consciousness is unstable. It's wavering. Then when air dissolves into consciousness, the external side is exhalation but no inhalation. So when you die, the last thing you do is one big out breath. If you can do that consciously, then you just see the body disappear below you, see, and you could easily detach from it. The internal sign is awareness becomes a steady light. And this comes, I would say, where it's not included in this way, in the Tibetan way, I'd say that's where ether comes in. Because you're now beginning to visit different ethers. We know there's a physical ether, space, right? But the kingdoms of heaven are another ether. And this is where the soul would like to go inside without any... Now it's given up the world. It sees, oh, the world was just a dream, it's over for me. Now it's turning and it's looking inside of itself and seeing these lights. These different kingdoms of heaven within. Christ said, my Father's mansion has different chambers. So they're beginning to see these different lands inside, and you have caught a glimpse of them when you're dreaming, but you didn't take them to be real, and you didn't move towards them. You didn't study them. You didn't meditate on them when you woke up, so they don't really become real to you. They're still foggy perception. You see. But a master would study these and stay with them through a lifetime of 50, 60, 70, 80 years, become a yogi, become a seer, and so forth. And by the time they exit the body, these things are a done deal. They don't even have to think. Like Dalai Lama is pictured on the wall, probably doesn't even have to think about these things. He knows them like the back of his hand. These are the Bardo states. I'm going through them. I've done it before, no problem. Now I'm back to my Buddha nature. I think I'll take another birth. Or he said, maybe not this time. He's actually guided Tibet as far as he can guide it. Red Chinese have now annexed it into a vacation land for them. So he's probably not coming back again, unless it's to help some souls. So that's the first bardo that all happens at the moment of death. That happens in 7 days, they say. After the break, we'll look at what happens the next 7 days, and then the next 24 days. We'll see how the soul returns. So that's the moment, the bardo of passing from the body, as described by Tibetan Buddhism. So here, let's take 15 minutes. Aerate, liquidate. Those are the 5 elements. Thank you. Namaste and welcome back to the second half of our first class here in San Francisco. Continuing on with the Amritabindu Upanishad. The bindu is that drop or that dot, and Amrita means truth or the nectar of truth. So you can suss the ultimate meaning out of the name of this Upanishad with just that one word, Amritabindu. And you can see that it has been giving us a whole stream of nectar, and we've been studying it all last year, and then continuing it on this year. And we'll be concluding the Adhyatma Upanishad up in Portland this coming weekend, if you want to come up there. And be 2 classes on that. Oh, actually not next weekend, the weekend after next, because next weekend is our retreat in Seattle on Sri Ramakrishna and universality, a very precious topic. So you could also join us for that. There's still room at that retreat. And so we have been revisiting Sloka 9 in terms of the bardos. We should finish up the teaching on the bardos so you can feel you can leave today in this study of the drop of nectar with a little drop of nectar yourself, because these are, of course, the culminated teachings of Tibetan Buddhism for, 1,300 years or more, in part. And you can see that the bardo at the moment of death is more involved and intricate than we would have imagined if we hadn't have had this benefit of this study of these Tibetan Buddhists for all of this time. Tibetan Buddhism was kind of a wonderful blend of yoga and tantra. There's a lot of colorful, and it's also got a little bit of the ancient Bon religion from Old Tibet in it. It's where you get all the beautiful colors and the tankas and the way they've put together aesthetically. Everything is very beautiful, and the paintings of the Buddha fields and all of that coming from this inner meditation for so many centuries. So the bardo of the moment of death is accompanied by those things, and you could probably summate it by saying, giving up your romance with the 5 elements, nature. Enlightenment is all about getting beyond nature. Nature is a great trap. Its beauty is a great trap. And if you want freedom, then of course you're going to want to be unbound, outside of the confines of the body, which is consisting of the 5 elements. So it brings up the question in Buddhism and Hinduism, was it wise to take a birth? And Swami Vivekananda was asked that once. He gave the Vedanta teachings for that first visit he was here, and after some months of those teachings, one man came up to him and said, well, then should a man be reborn? Because he was wondering at the rather standoffish and detached and renounced tradition that Swamiji was speaking from, and his own experience as a monk. And Swamiji answered, I certainly hope he will not be reborn, not till he can do so in full consciousness. So there is a way, evidently, that these souls can come back to earth, like the Jivan Mukta that I mentioned in the first half, the living liberated soul, where you could master things, but it's probably going to be a little different than you might have thought in your innocence and naivete before you got into studying the Dharma, so that you would avail yourself of inner dynamics that most people know nothing about, particularly in the West, even in the East nowadays quite a bit. But even at the time of Jesus, when the Judaism was having its fall, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about souls being reborn and enlightenment and things like that. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, in bed with the politicians and Romans and all that. So it was pretty much a mess, and that's why nobody liked Jesus. My teacher used to say, today the son of a carpenter, tomorrow the darling of millions of souls. So when he lived, he wasn't popular. Afterwards, then, of course, they took him as an ideal. So coming into knowledge of this, Jnanam, as the Upanishad was telling us, Jnanam and Dhyanam. First, get the wisdom. This isn't worldly knowledge we're talking about. It's esoteric knowledge, Dharma. That was a good word for it. And then meditating on it. See, meditation on what you have not realized is healthy. Meditation on what you've realized is enlightening. So you need to get this realization first of the nature of your soul, the nature of reality, call it God or Brahman or Almighty Father or whatever you want to call it, and then you have to have the knowledge of nature. So when we say we need to transcend nature to get free, that should be obvious to most people, that bodies are limitations. Bodies are attended by birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. That's called the 6 transformations. Lord Buddha named those. So it's not a fun time you're having here. I beg to differ if you think so. Or if you are having a fun time, it will pass. And it will not be so fun later, possibly. But if you're a master of soul, master of nature, then you have a much better chance at accomplishing something like this as a matter of course. It should be a natural thing to take on a body and give it up. Besides the Jivan Mukta, which is a living liberated soul, there's another great ideal in India called the Videha Mukta. Videha means no body. Deha means body. So Videha, no bodies. So you're a free soul because you don't take on bodies anymore. And then there's the free soul that takes on bodies. So both of those are a very interesting study. And you couldn't call one superior to the other, like apples and oranges, as they say. But it is a marked difference between the soul who sees the world once and gives it up and never comes back again, as that soul who sees the world once and comes back again several times. But when you study the one who comes back again several times, you'll find out they're not there for freedom. They're not there for fun. They're not there for anything. They're not there for enlightenment either, because they already have that. They're there to help souls get rid of their own ignorance. And that's their only loka sangraha, Krishna calls it in the Gita. Arjuna, you should know, he said on the battlefield, right there between the two armies, I never come back to earth because I have anything to gain. I come back for loka sangraha, that is for the highest good of living beings. Loka means bardo. This looks like lokas and bardos are much the same thing. That is, it's space in time. There's some space there, and time had to pass for it to appear. And then you get into it with name and form, and you suffer karma. So name, form, time, space, and karma is the definition for Maya. She's fivefold. She deludes you by name. You take a name and a form, and then time and space seem real to you, and then you do actions, and you get the results. So that's a very dicey proposition, and most people run afoul of it. For lifetimes they'll do that. They'll develop habits, and these habits cling to the mind. This man has got habits clinging to his mind. See the first description. He's got the 5 elements. He hasn't transcended them. The first 7 days after his death, he's looking at them and trying to get free of them. He can't do it. Then the next 7 days, which is a 14-day bardo, he takes another 7 days to look at the heavens, the kingdoms of heaven within, and he tries to take a birth there. If he can take a birth, if you pardon me shifting to the Kundalini system, if he can take a birth from the heart up and not the heart down, then he doesn't have to come back to earth anymore. So it's important to open the heart, is what this Upanishad just said, right? You must, to the extent that the mind gets merged into the heart, to that extent he will get free. So opening up the heart means you have to love God. You have to love God more than the world. Isn't that what Jesus said? Take your choice, God or Mammon. If you choose Mammon, you better be in for Mr. Toad's wild ride. and a lot of curves and obstacles. But if you can open up the heart, and then you can open up these other centers, they're called, one at the throat, that's called Vishuddha, very pure. And then Agya means free of knowledge. You get so realized that knowledge and ignorance don't exist for you anymore. Not just ignorance goes away, knowledge goes away. And then the crown chakra. See, so that's of course 1,000-petaled, they call it. Sahasrara is the Sanskrit term. So anyway, my point here is that if you can open up, merge the mind into the heart to that extent, you can be free. Free of what? Free of having to descend to the gut, to the sexual organs, and to the anus, if you want to align it with the body. Those are the 3 lower worlds. Sri Ramakrishna called them eating, drinking, and sex life. And everyone's into that. See? Everyone's into that without any thought of what's going to happen later from entertaining those things. So this is why, in a nutshell, they're not, the seers, the enlightened seers, are really not that enamored of the body or the world. They want you to give it up. And Christ was no different. Birds have nests, foxes have holes. You don't have any place here. So why did you come here? So it's a very good question to ask yourself, why did I take a body and should I take another? Is that going to conduce to my highest freedom? Well, Buddhism and Hinduism have both been accused of being rather pessimistic, philosophically speaking. But I think there's a difference between pessimism and realism. If you find out what's real, which is going to be outside of these limitations, and you court it as your ideal, then you can actually be free while you're in the body. And that would be that first ideal, Jivan Mukta. And after that you consider whether I want to come back again into the body, like say 14 times like he has, or Vivekananda coming again, or Jesus returning. Then you can come back in full consciousness. So that was the gist of Swami Vivekananda's saying. I certainly hope he will not be reborn ever again unless he can do so in full consciousness. Full consciousness means awake. Arise awake. Know yourself to be one with the Lord. Meditate upon your own self as the Lord in your heart. Don't cause any distinction between you and God anymore. There is no difference between God and human being. They're the same thing. And in fact, have you seen any other God here except yourself? Are animals your God? Well, some people seem to think so. They're dressing them up and feeding them. They won't even come to my retreats because they have to go and walk the dog or take care of the cat. I said God, not dog. So, how about up there? Have you seen any God? Have you even seen an angel? When Paul saw Christ on the road to Damascus, he had a vision. He was in a long train of people. No one else saw Christ. Only Paul saw him. So if we're to believe Paul, then we have to believe that nobody else saw Christ, so Christ wasn't really there in the physical form. He appeared in an ethereal form, only for the eye of Paul, who was open to see him at that time. And when Christ walked on the water and saved, was it Peter out in the boat who was drowning or something? It wasn't Christ's actual body that walked on the water. Christ was somewhere else. And he was still in the body, but he caused an apparition of himself to be seen by Peter so that Peter could get the inspiration to save himself. You can't believe in superstitious things, miracles and so forth. Those are superstitions of religion. They get built into myths. Vedanta cuts through that, says, here's what happened. And so when you see yourself as a transmigrating soul, which is probably how most people will start out seeing themselves, if they see themselves as having a soul at all. Have to start from that premise, right? Because most people are soulless. Materialists and so forth. Scientists even. Intellectual people are soulless quite often. So if you see yourself as a bit of consciousness that has an intelligence that's moving from place to place, then you have to start with reincarnation and consider it. This has to be something that you take up as your meditation. And it's going to be in accord with how you did it over your past incarnations. See, who was I all that time? I was always the Atman, but I thought myself to be the personality. So I had different names, I had different forms, I had different gender, And, I could have even been an animal. And all these things open up to you. I drowned, so I had fear of water. I mean, all these things open up to you as to who you thought you were or who you think you are in this present lifetime. That's called conditioning by the Buddhists. Your mind is conditioned to think this way. So uncondition it. Decommission it. Read the riot act to your ego and say you're not in charge anymore. There's a new God here. And it's called Brahman or Atman or Buddha nature. And it doesn't transmigrate. It just dreams. It dreams himself. It convinces itself that its dream is real, like the wizard with the wand. So strike that all off. Strike off thy fetters, bonds that bind thee down, of shining gold or darker baser ore. Good, good, bad, bad, and all the dual throng. No slave is slave, caressed or whipped, not free. For fetters, though of gold, are not less strong to bind. So off with them. Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. Beautiful verse out of Swami Vivekananda's Song of the Sannyasin, Song of the Free Soul. So you want to get rid of both iron chains and gold chains because they both bind. So if you're chasing heaven or goodness or you're trying to get away from vice, but virtue is hard to attain, you're going back and forth lifetime to lifetime in this set of dualities, and you're going to have to see your soul as naturally beyond the dualities in order to get a clue. So you're not becoming anymore, you're being. So as long as you're becoming, you have to do a practice. Then you're safe. But if you're thinking yourself to transmigrate or transmorph from place to place, or gender to gender, I'm in San Francisco here, or wherever you're doing it, you see, then you're still living a dream. It's just not whether it's right or wrong, it's just that it's a dream. It's like not moral or immoral. You have to do it again, you see. It's that, it's just a dream, and you have to awaken from all dreams. You have to be an awakened soul. So this soul is practicing a conscious death. See? And if he doesn't make it in 14 days, then he's got the 24, 3-week or 3.5-week variety of it, and he's probably going to have to examine his last lifetime. There's even some teachings about that in Christianity and Judaism, where the soul looks at its last lifetime, sees what it did wrong, and says, I'm going to go back and do it better next time. And probably doesn't. Or does some things better, but doesn't do it, creates more karma by not being clear. So the ultimate clarity would be this is a dream. Have you ever woken yourself up from your own dream? Say, oh, this is ridiculous. See? It's futile, isn't it? Well, they say that about this life too. This life is a futile dream. And for most souls, that'll be the case when you look at their lives and the end of their lives. So it's very important to live a conscious birth and have a conscious death. He says here, I got this from his very lips, he was a very wonderful soul. If you practice hard enough, you can gain enlightenment in this life, and that is best. If your practice in this life was guided by a spiritual teacher, then you will experience the clear light at the time of death and recognize the nature of mind. When Buddhism talks about the nature of mind, they're talking about its pure mind, or Buddha mind, original mind, not the mind that is the brain. If that does not happen, there's a possibility to do so, that is, gain enlightenment, after death. There are practices one can do at the time of death. The spiritual master can also introduce the dying person to the bardo in such a way that he or she will be able to recognize the clear light when it occurs. It's been interesting, like Holy Mother made a comment once, says that some people will live totally ignorant lives, and at the very last moment they'll just wake up. They'll see the light. It's like they sort of plan to live a dumb, stupid, ignorant life. And then they said, I'll just see through it at the end. See? So you have to realize about souls that are transmigrating, there are all sorts of varieties of things that can happen to those souls. Masters like Krishna, Buddha, Ram, Sri Ramakrishna, and so forth, they have seen all of these. They've seen these souls come and go. There's a river of souls called Kaivalya Pragbara that always courses towards freedom. And there's a river of souls called Samsara Pragbara that always courses away from God. So they've looked at this river of souls, and they've seen the characteristics of these souls, and they've seen which ones are qualified to seek freedom and which ones aren't. And they'll leave the ones that aren't alone. It's like kicking a dead horse to try and wake people up. Let me tell you about it, especially in America. So if you have the truth, people will run away. If you are the truth, like Jesus, they'll dislike you, revile you, and so forth, crucify you. So the Sufis say, trying to preach Dharma in this world, it's like trying to convince people to buy water when the river is flowing right nearby. Their own self is pure and perfect, and you're trying to convince them of that, but they won't go that direction. So they prefer to be ignorant. They prefer to suffer. And suffering and enjoyment, of course. They prefer that to being blissful. See, they'll prefer bondage to freedom. So those souls, you don't pay them no never mind. They're not going to wake up for ages, probably. They'll have many, many lifetimes of bondage, and only divine intervention, on the part of a great soul. But if they do, they have to take on a great karma for that soul. They'll suffer for waking the person up prematurely, as it were. Otherwise, you look for these people that are qualified, people who are interested. I want to be free. It's called mumukshutvam in Sanskrit, and it's the fourth of four great jewels, mumukshutvam, an actual, sincere desire to be free. It's like this, not like these souls that you run into, like one lady said, I want to die. I'm not, she told me, I want to commit suicide. So I took her swimming on the north shore of Oahu once, and the waves drug her out. So she was screaming. So I went out and pulled her out of the drink and brought her in. I said, you still want to die? Oh, no. She didn't want to die at all. There was her chance. Why didn't you just stop screaming and go under? Take a big breath, have it over with. But no, she wanted life. She clung to life. So people are pretending and posing all the time, other than what they truly are and what they truly want. To be a seer, or to be a realized soul, is to be forthright and not only speak it, but live it and seek it sincerely and realize it in your own lifetime, in this lifetime. So who knows when what form Maya will take next, and what form of covering she'll bring. Avarana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. Those are the two forms of covering. One is an outright covering that causes people to be completely blind to their true nature. The other covering is a distortion that makes something look other than what it really is. That's how the Tantrists describe it. It's very clever. She's very clever. So either complete veiling or distortion. That's how Maya works. But there's a third kind of Maya called Prakasha Shakti. She reveals. Like this. She'll bring you into the presence of something revelatory. And that revelatory won't just be seeing your Savior walk on water or something. It'll be particular to you specifically and your process of awakening. So these three states brought to you by Tibetan Buddhism after 1400 years of meditation on these bardos. The bardo at the moment of death. Then there's the bardo of Buddha nature. Let's look at that. Lights in 5 colors appear, associated with the 5 Buddha kalas and various deities. The Rinpoche says, deities emanating through mandalas appear in peaceful and wrathful aspects, representing emptiness or clarity. You know what a mandala is, right? You see these beautiful mandalas that the Tibetan Buddhists create, very intricate. And I've seen those done in person. Beautiful. It's a form of art, but you just want to go there and say, "Oh, can I do that?" and then master it, never know what you're doing. See, it actually is where the deities live, in mandalas inside of you. So if you start to see these 5 colors and these forms, then if you go towards them and pierce into them, the deities are living there. So that's where your ancestors went. That's where the gods and goddesses are. That's where the angels are. That's where the Trinity is, inside of these mandalas, inside your own consciousness. They're inner worlds. And so if you recognize them outside to be not just symbols, like something somebody created on the ground to make a temple holy, but actually manifestations of your own consciousness that are doorways inside, then you can start seeing those in your meditation, or at the time of death. So that's the second bardo there. The bardo of Buddha nature starts showing itself to you. If you can get through this without panicking, see, without going unconscious, basically, because most people are born unconscious. It means they died unconscious in their previous lifetime. Then isn't that really the only good reason for why some people come back enlightened and some don't? Is that God being judgmental? "Oh, I'm going to give you a blessing, but you're going to be cursed. I have passed my judgment." See, I wouldn't worship a God like that. It's up to the soul's own abilities and how they practiced and how sincere they were and how much they attained that they can bring that back with them in their next lifetime. It doesn't have anything to do with luck or chance or grace. It has to do with your own ability to practice and realize the truth. It's up to you. No one else can free you. Has Christ freed you over 2,000 years? I've seen many. Meister Eckhart, he probably got free. But they ostracized him. There's a few Christians that are very remarkable souls, but there's a difference between a saint and a seer, too. India produces seers more than saints. Seers, they want to go to that non-dual platform and see themselves as one with divine reality. I and my Father are one. So there's a third bardo here, unfortunately, a bardo of becoming. So you're falling back into the illusion of change, or the illusion of finitude. You're really an infinite being, but you're coming back to the finite. And that's out of your own delusion that you're doing this. You're keeping an ego, and the ego's not developed and ripe yet. So it has nowhere to go but back to the body. And that's why so many people are born. Sometimes that story I use in conjunction with this Sri Ramakrishna is the camel eats thorny bushes, but its gums bleed, right? So people do all these sorts of painful and harmful things, and they just get reborn doing those painful and harmful things. That's why crack babies are born. They're attracted to crack parents. It's not God's doing or devil's doing. It's their own doing. This is the law of karma in the world. So why do you think so many camels are born? They have a desire to eat thorny bushes. So where are they going to go to get that? To take camel parents. See, that's the real reason why you see hundreds and thousands of cows and hundreds and thousands of horses and hundreds of thousands of human beings. They have desire. And it's pulling them back into the body. And the seer goes, wait a minute, I want to stop that process. I want to get off the wheel of birth and death. I certainly don't want to take an animal body, which is possible, by the way. You look into animals' eyes, and they're not very developed intellectually, but there's a soul there. And, I'd say plants and insects, basically just prana there, energy. But there's a soul in an animal. So beings can be reborn there. Krishna says in the Gita, Arjuna, there are many wombs to be born in. And actually some animal wombs are probably superior to some human wombs. You look at it. In Japan, the dogs get treated very nicely and they get their own graveyard. But whatever the case may be, you're getting more into the lower teachings of that. This is really more of an intermediate or pivotal teaching. So he says, if a man fails to recognize Buddha nature, then he is prepared to be reborn in one of the 6 realms of rebirth. And that's it, as we say. Janggang Kantur Rinpoche, to conclude it, says that this teaching on the bardos is extraordinarily important for our present-day world, because today we live with widespread conditions of distraction that weaken our ability to concentrate fully upon whatever practice we are engaged in. And it is only with fearlessness that we can maintain mindfulness and awareness free of distraction. So he's calling distraction the chronic disease of today. Inability to concentrate. But if you can concentrate for any given time, the father of yoga says that's like a samadhi. You're actually having a high state of experience when you're in concentration. But the mind will wander off. Of course, you can concentrate on lower and intermediate things, but to concentrate on Brahman alone, have you ever tried that? Very difficult. Subtly difficult. Concentrate on your true nature. Where is that? So to concentrate on spiritual ideal alone is going to be your ultimate challenge. But his point here, more to the multitudes of people, is that they get distracted and they lose their concentration. And they'll certainly fall into that habit at the time of death when things are not ideal. Far less than ideal when you're having to lay on your deathbed and think about leaving your body. And you think your body is real. And you think you are the body, and that's a real bad predicament to be in. You are the soul, eternal, formless. Those kinds of teachings should come back to you at the moment of your death, and you should emphasize those as were given to you by your teacher and by the scriptures and your own practice. Those 3 things, the triple gem. A good guru, a path, and your own practice, your own direct experience are what you need in spiritual life to make it work. Along those lines, the reason why so many people are staying ignorant is, according to the father of yoga, is because of commerce. Why is it, they ask him, that a person doesn't remember their true nature in life? Because they're engaged in making money, he said. Aparigraha is the term. That's one of the yamas, and the yamas of yoga, right? So parigraha, usually they translate it as gift giving. So if you're involved in gift giving, like, oh, here's some land, oh, here's a diamond, or whatever people are doing in commerce, at all levels of commerce, then that's making you forget God. You forgot the reality, and you're plunged in relativity. Sri Ramakrishna said, if you live enough lifetimes plunged in relativity, you'll forget your true nature and you'll think the world is real. So everyone here thinks the world is real. Only a few souls are saying, pardon me, I think it's unreal. Oh, we don't want to hear that. Because our dreams are based in it. We're invested in it. We're invested in our children. But our children are evil. Any soul who hasn't surrendered themselves to God is an evil soul. It's only when they surrender themselves to God that they become themselves again. They're in a state of madness. And this is how you explain the insanity of the world around you nowadays. They're not in their right minds. And that one mind, what they call here original mind, see, or pure conscious awareness, that's your right mind. And you'd be acting, thinking, and moving or not moving, as the case may be, in an entirely different way if you were in your right mind. So we'd love to bring forth the teachings of the Bardo sometime. In conjunction with that sloka, that means Brahman is without doubt, endless, beyond reason and analogy, beyond all proof, causeless, knowing which the wise become free. And the next sloka says, the highest truth is that pure consciousness which realizes There is neither control of the mind nor its coming into play. Neither am I bound, nor am I a worshipper. Neither am I a seeker after liberation, or one who has attained liberation. So, a person who gets beyond all dualities. So you say there are dualities called pleasure and pain, right? Good and bad. I mean, those are common dualities that most people can't get beyond. But as you start meditating deeper and deeper, you'll find out there's these very deep dualities, like, let's say, birth and death. If you started contemplating birth and death, then you'd be at a level of duality that's more enlightening. You'd be on the trail of the truth. But if you started meditating, say, on form and formlessness, now you're getting somewhere. Oh, I went into formlessness last night, but I'm back in form. What's going on here? See? So you're on the track of truth there. Then you start meditating on, say, bondage and liberation, because that'll eventually prove to you that you never were bound, that you are a free soul, and bondage was your dream that you were having, and that bondage was all your own undertaking. You superimposed it upon yourself, and nobody did that for you. Of course, your parents and your ancestors and everyone were in cahoots with it, but they didn't know they were even doing it either. So everyone's on the wrong page. There's a song in India which sings, "To hope for help from friends and family provides no real solution. Don't you know that everyone's lost here? Everyone lives in pallid imitation of everyone else." So monkey see, monkey do. You see, oh, he's doing that, I think I'll do that. It would at least help if you could look at Christ and imitate him. A beautiful book called Imitation of Christ that Swami Vivekananda liked. So look at an ideal soul and see what they're doing and try doing that. But no, see, you won't do that. You'll just follow your ancestors into rounds of rebirth and ignorance. Aren't we having a lot of fun here? So Holy Mother said that. The people who have come to Sri Ramakrishna and I in this lifetime are not into having fun. They know how important it is to have a human body. So you must use your human birth, your human body, for gaining enlightenment. Because you never know what other body you'll get in the future. Or what kind of mind you might get in the future after your actions are done. So that's why he considers this an extremely important teaching for this day. I was there on hand to hear him say that prior to his car accident. I'm sure when he got killed in a car accident in America, this Tibetan man, he was just like his self after the accident and his self during the accident. Because he had seen himself as a birthless, deathless soul. So here comes a car, it's going to hit me, I'm going to die. Well, that's just my body. Boom. I'm still here. Body's gone. I'm seeing through this eye. See. So taking on a body, giving up a body is nothing to these souls. They'll be the same soul amidst all this change and phenomena which is not actual, non-actual. So if you want to flesh out this teaching on the Bardos with a teaching from India, of course, Tibetan Buddhism got their teachings, their start from India. From Naropa and Tilopa, who were powerful followers of Buddhism in India before 700 AD. So India has marched everywhere. We don't see India. She's behind the scenes in everything. She was behind, I'm convinced she was behind Christ's teachings too. So he must have gone there. In those 12 years, nobody knew where he went. But India is everywhere, at the foundation of everything. And the teachings, especially the non-dual teachings, prove that when you begin to study them. But whatever the case may be, India's teachings on causality is based on this trip one takes inside oneself, called Utpatti. Utpatti is, English translation of that is origins. You have to look back towards what was prior to you. So in lifetimes, you would try and remember your last lifetime, or if you're meditating, all of a sudden you'd remember your past lifetime. That would give you a clue back to the origin of where you came from, and you could start tracing that. That's the idea. And as you meditated more deeply and concentrated, he was saying, then you'd start to link together where you've come from, and you trace yourself back to an origin, which Christ says is the Word. You trace yourself back to the Word. And at the same time, you'd see that this whole long process of thousands and thousands of years that you've been being incarnated was also an illusion. That time is an illusion. So practice meditation, cut time down, one song in India says, because it's not real. It's come out of your mind. We realize how it goes away in deep sleep. There's no time. So why didn't time persist if it was real? Only the real will persist. The unreal changes. So anything that changes, and that's going to include time, my form, my name, my karma, all of that is not real. I should put it conveniently in a little wastebasket called not real. And take it out every day. That's called meditation. Take it out and dump it. And remain my true self, changeless, birthless, deathless, timeless, and beyond space. So here's a bunch of levels of space. I've actually tried to put this together with pictures of like water, plants, lava, angels, space, and so forth. It's origins they're talking about, that the soul has to trace itself, its origin. That's called utpatti in Sanskrit. So if this is a kind of chart that you would start down here. If you were following this trail of breadcrumbs inside, then you'd say, well, there's food, and there's vital energy comes from food. There's the sperm that gets produced from food. There's the ovum to which the sperm will be placed. The physical body is necessary. The 5 active senses, the 5 cognitive senses, that's hearing, tasting, touching, seeing, and smelling, plus the human brain. This is all called this material cause of things. So food is at the root of everything. If you've followed Vedanta or Hinduism or Buddhism at all, you know how important food is to the tradition. So it's important to purify your food before you eat it, for instance, by blessing it, because there are a lot of defects in food. People who eat, I eat organically. Doesn't matter. You've still got defects in organic food. The defect is that somebody bought it, grew it, and bought it, and sold it to you. That's a defect. Their poison of making money off it is a defect in your food. And when you eat your food, you take that poison on and you suffer from it. So unless you bless it, you can't get rid of that poison, that greed. The food has greed in it, has commerce in it, right? So you're not thinking about this. See? So what's the best thing is to get a mantra from a realized soul, and every time I eat something, bless it and put it in my mouth, and then it turns into nectar, and I feel good, vibrant energy from it. And then the sperm comes, and the ovum, and the whole life goes on without a hitch. However, as far as seeking origins goes, that's just the physical cause of things. So these are all different levels of cause. Take a look at them there. The material cause, the efficient cause, the primordial cause, the subtle cause, the cosmic cause, the remote cause, and the causeless cause. Remote cause would be the word. You see, Om, there it is. Unstruck sound of the word Om, right there in Sanskrit. So that's the remote cause. So you have a long ways to go back inside of yourself before you get to the word. And then a long way from the word to Brahman, Sri Ramakrishna said. When I heard the word, then I had to go a long way deeper inside to get to God from the word. So at this state of your consciousness, the word was with God, but it's not one with God yet. You have to make it one with God. And that's your own consciousness that does that. Nobody else can do that for you. Even the Trinity is saying, why don't you go back to the worlds and have fun? The angels are saying, let's get embodied again. I'll appear to you a couple times in a vision. It'll be fun. No thanks. I want to know myself as the producer of all this. It's my dream, so I want to awaken from it. And that's what a realized soul is about in India. They're enlightened souls by the dozens, by the hundreds. We haven't seen that in any other culture until Tibet got a hold of the teachings. China got a hold of them. Japan finally got a hold of them. Zen is just Hinduism, 64 generations after it was taught to by the Indian seers in India. So it's all based in India. So that's one origin to trace. But this origin to trace, the thing about tracing origins is you have to put one thing back into the other. So think about 5 Russian dolls. Sometimes I show that chart. So one goes back into the other. So this is your non-self. All of this is not you. All the way up to the word is really not you, because the word comes out of you too. There's one beautiful quote that says, dissolve the 5 elements into the 5 senses, and those 10 dissolve them into the subtle senses and the subtle elements. Then dissolve those into the mind. Dissolve the mind into the buddhi and the ego. Dissolve the buddhi and the ego into the cosmic mind. Then dissolve the cosmic mind into the word. Then find the word inside of yourself, and then dissolve all that into Brahman. So you go from the small self to the real self to the great self. Swami Vivekananda said that once. There is no God. There's just the great self. Call that God if you want. So he's totally taking away the foundation of people who taught that there was a God to go get salvation from. You'll only get salvation from yourself. And all of religion has been playing tricks on people. That's called irreligion, and that happens. And that's why people, like rats leaving a sinking ship, religions go down, they go looking somewhere else. That's why we, when we were teenagers, went looking to India. There's some semblance of the truth still there. We could find something like this, trace it, and remember our true nature, and get free. Not be it end up in the hands of our ancestors. Fair faces and false hearts that are around us. We want to be free in our own right. So from the material cause, what does that get dissolved into? Basically, prana, you see, and the 5 elements. These are called the primordial cause and the efficient cause. Efficient cause there is nature and the gunas. There's a separate teaching to go with those, of course. But basically, suffice to say that nature has 2 sides to it, and you're only seeing one. You're seeing air, earth, fire, water, and ether out there. But they just told you had 5 cognitive senses. So there are 5 inner senses that see air, earth, fire, water, and ether in a dream, right? So they exist. The 5 elements exist in a subtle form called the tanmatras. Swamiji came here and said, I see in the West you don't know about prana and you don't know about the tanmatras. Those are the 2 things that are missing from your ideology, from your cosmology. So how can you go inside if you can't make a shift from the gross elements to the subtle elements? You can't. You're stuck in the gross elements. And if you don't know what to get a hold of to help you make the shift, then you don't know about prana. Man does not live by bread alone. That's Jesus saying prana, basically. You don't live by bread and food alone. You have to dissolve food back into unmanifested nature. Manifested nature, you're seeing it here, you're stuck in it, but it comes out of seeds. And those seeds are in your mind, and that's called unmanifested nature. It's all subtle. It's like the kingdoms of heaven within you. It's all made of mind. And it all comes out of seeds in your mind. And you water those seeds. Quit watering, maybe. Burn them. Some of the seers said just burn those seeds. One monk told me once, up in Seattle, Swami Bhaskaraనంda, he told me, well, a monk, Babaji, that's a soul who takes a canoe to a far distant island and burns it the minute he gets there. You're not leaving any chance that he may come back to this world. So he takes a canoe to a far distant island and he burns it the minute he arrives there. I've arrived, I don't want any chance of going back there again, so I'm going to burn this canoe. It means burn all of this, all the seeds that produce it, you burn it. So this is my last lifetime. You say to yourself, I don't want to come back here again. I ask that question to my students every 5 years or so. You coming back? No. Having children? No. Desires? I'm finishing them up this lifetime. They're very adamant about that. Very good to see those kinds of intrepid, strong souls, free of weakness, free of sentimentality. Oh, I want to come back again. I want to see my children again. I want to take care of the dog again. Give it up. It's called renunciation. It's not a popular word in the West, but it is a main word, tyagi, or vairagya in Sanskrit. A main word like bardo or loka, or causality, origins, and so forth. So you would dissolve these into each other. So eventually you would be dissolving everything back into the prana. Prana, the sign of prana is your breath, right? So they'll have you practice breathing exercise. Now I'm breathing in, now I'm holding, now I'm breathing out. Am I enlightened yet? You have to know the meaning of prana, what it is meant to do. It's meant to take you inside. It's not meant to make you just healthy body, because you're not the body. And that's what people again are stuck in. Hatha and pranayama. Body positions and breath. But what's the meaning of those? Where's their origin? It's back farther into the subtle cause of things called the mind. What's the mind? Intelligence, ego, thought, dual mind itself, desire for life and desire for activity. That's the mind in a nutshell, according to Shankara. So, buddhi, ahamkara, chitta, manas, kama, and karma are all there. That's your mind field. Karma shaya, a father of yoga calls it. Mind field. Sometimes it could be called minefield if you're not careful. You're going to step on one of those things eventually. But as a mind field, it's where you create karma and where you come back to live it out on earth, you see. So if you can get to that mind field and burn those seeds, you will not have to come back and take a body. That just stands to reason. So there are people who are very serious about that. Meanwhile, they're living in this very beautiful realm called heaven, or higher heaven, which is where heaven falls, right here in your mind. It's your mind that goes from heaven to earth to hell. These aren't actual locations in space and time. Why? Because space and time are illusory. So you can't place them anywhere. This earth, you cannot place it as a separate world. It's in your mind. See, it's a manifestation of your mind, so you have to place it back in the mind. If you, with billions of other souls, come out and consider it to be real, then all of a sudden Earth's real. Then your ancestors want to come to it. And meanwhile, they're living in a lower heaven called ancestor heaven. That's called Pitri. It's like a Petri dish. It's kind of a double entendre there, but Pitri also means ancestors in Sanskrit. So it's the realm of the Pitris, and they have their own heaven, and they think that's real. But they're yanked out of it every once in a while because of their karma, and find themselves in a body again. Oh, what happened? So this transmigration process, every wise soul in the world has talked to us about it, and we're still not keying in on it. We think it's some sort of highfalutin philosophy, or we think it's some sort of dream that they dreamed up to make life better or worse. But this is the kingdoms of heaven within that you're traveling every night, every 24 hours you go there. And you're not aware of it? So you have to put these together, like A, U, and M would be the way of putting together these 7 causes and effects in an Advaitic way. Just waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Okay, I've heard enough. Now I'm going to master A, master U, master M, and then I'm going to be free. So you can cut to the chase that way. But this way is an older way. So with the mind, the subtle cause, and we're running out of time here, so we need to wrap this up into the ultimate cause. All of these, the material, the efficient, the primordial, and the subtle, have to have a seat somewhere. And that's where you hear about the mind of God, causal level. That's all seeds. Very blissful place, by the way. But you see the origins of all things there. You can see here, it's made up of form and formlessness. It's made up of higher cognizance. Time, space, and causation as ideas have their birth there. Cosmic laws and phases of time have their birth there. And attraction of the individual soul to each other has its birth there. Ragas, kala, kalas, desha, nimitta, jnanam, and form and formlessness, rupa, arupa they call it in Sanskrit, all have their seat there in the cosmic cause of things. See these two arrows? Here's evolution, here's involution. To every evolution there has to be an involution. So if you come down evolution style under the 5 elements and you get, the scientists get a hold of you and so forth, and they'll say there's no involution. You came actually this way for 4,320,000,000 years from a one-celled animal, and you finally made it to a human being. Congratulations. See? So there is no inside, there's no involution. It's all outside. Still, you can look up in the universe and see billions of worlds. So even the outside is infinite. Amazing, right? It's absolutely amazing. But whose amazing is it? See, ultimately, it's your own. Those stars, those suns, billions of suns up there are thoughts here. So basically, if you want to say it, the suns are your thoughts. They're great thoughts. They're light. They're intelligence. But they've just reached a gross form there. They had to manifest somehow, so they manifested as suns. But there's no sentiency in a sun. It's all physical light. The real sentiency was in you, in your thought. You're the sentient principle. You gave birth to all that. And it doesn't just work on the physical universe. You have to involve back to the source, which, according to Jesus telling John, would be the Word. Then you're going to get somewhere closer to reality when you find the Word is the source of all this. So that's what you would dissolve cosmic cause into the remote cause. There you'll find cosmic mind, unmanifested nature and seeds, the unstruck sound of Om, and the primordial soul is there. You're getting closer and closer to your true nature. And then your last vestige of dissolution is going to have to be into the causeless cause. You might want to ask Divine Mother to help you with that. That's where Shakti exists. She's at the hub of all this. And just watching you dream it and come back and dream it. So if, at least if you have the idea of an involution, then you're not stuck out here on earth for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. You know there's a place inside you go. But according to some seers, you can trace that. You can trace the individual soul's tendency to transmigrate. And you could also then find out the secret of transcendence. I think one of my talks this year is called Transgression, Transmigration, Transformation, and Transcendence, and Transparency. So you'll want to know these things so that you can make an inner journey. And this isn't just happening here, the moment of your death. You shouldn't wait to try it there. You should meditate tomorrow and do this. See? It's all inside of you. You should go into deep sleep tonight and dream tonight with the consciousness that I will see this. I want to see the workings, O Mother, of your whole entire worlds. All 7 of them or all three of them, or however you want to put that in different religions, or all the bardos. I want to see this more and more. Continue your meditations until this begins to appear to you in them. 5 years, 10 years. My teacher had meditated 70 years by the time he passed. Our founder had meditated 45 years, 50 years by the time he passed, like Sixon. I've meditated since I was 20, so 48 years. You have to meditate a long time, because 48 years is a blink of the eye. Blink of the eye inside of the concept of time. So you must persevere in that practice, and things will begin to show itself to you. You know, the Buddhists, and we should end here, talk about emptiness. It's an interesting word. So they want you to attain emptiness. The Sanskrit word is shunyata. So have you attained emptiness yet, they'll say. So it means basically just empty out your mind and no thoughts anymore, and, no problems, no issues. You can attain emptiness every day in meditation and you're fine. Well, that's got one advantage, is that it'll stop watering the seeds that you usually think about, because you brood upon things in your mind, and that makes them germinate. See? Fear, doubt, those things actually help these things germinate. So you ought to take your mind off of brooding right away and put it in either on a high ideal, like Buddha or Krishna or Christ, or on emptiness, depending on which you prefer. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. See? So if you like form, find a high ideal, meditate on it, like we did on Sri Ramakrishna. Or if you find yourself to be a lover of formlessness and emptiness, then meditate on emptiness, but keep it up. Because in that emptiness, the fullness will appear. This great fullness called the Great Light, or the Great Spirit, or Brahman, or Almighty Father, or Tathagata Garbha, or Busho, Allah. See, that great self, if you want to call it that, will fill in the gaps for you and appear. And it will appear as your own nature, because as you're doing this involution, you're stripping away layers that kept you from knowing yourself, that you'd piled there over lifetimes. So now you just have to go clean house, you see. Here's your house. Doesn't that take us back to the very first sloka today? Mind is of two types, the pure and the impure. The pure is free of objects, the impure has them. So, simple truths with profound teachings, though, and will predicate that you need to put some of your precious energy, prana, and mind on these subjects so that you can get free in this very lifetime. So here, let's end with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya Abira Bira Mayiti Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.